up to this point, all we've been working on is the nice, pretty 2023 wr450, doing no maintenance, purely modifications. Got the BearingWorks ignition key kit. I actually didn't record mounting the Acubus, still don't know how to say it, I'll work on that. Bar bag, it does still clear, even with the ignition key kit. It's a little tight, and I might be losing a little bit of bag room for spare tools and stuff, but for the most part, it's still pretty good. Race Tech LED upgraded headlight, B&B off-road bash plate, all that fun stuff. All mods, not maintenance. And that's on the 2023, which at this stage is unnamed. So I've got to think of a name for her. I'm sort of shooting blanks a little bit. I was kind of thinking maybe we go with Gwen Racy, but I don't know, it's a bit gimmicky. But moving on from the 2023, then there's this. So this is the old dozer. This is Gurtrude, the 2007 wr450. So this is my first big bike. It has the L plate on the back there because I am still an L plater. So I only got my license a few months ago. We've done a lot of learning on this bike. So I bought this February 2025. Yep, 2025. So my first bike as an adult. Just went straight to 450. Growing up, I only ever had small bikes and stuff. So this is the first time I've had a big bike. And just as I picked up the new one, the linkage bearings and lower shock bearing for this bad boy have just let go. So right now, if I was to take it off the stand, which I might do just to show you guys, take it off the stand, you can compress the suspension, but because the bearings are worn out, you can't actually get any rebound out of it. So you're only operating with like a couple of inches of travel instead of the whole travel of the shock. So down in there's the shock. She's a lot dirtier than the new one. This poor old girl hasn't had a bath for a minute. But we've got to take that rear shock absorber out, and then down underneath here we've got some linkage suspension components that have some flogged out bearings. So we're going to try and do just the rear shock bearing and then the linkage bearings in this part in here, and hopefully that will make the suspension work again. So we've got a BearingWorks linkage bearing seal kit, so all the bearings and spacers and seals and all the stuff that we need in there. I do also have a front wheel bearing kit from, funnily enough, the same brand. These are both bought through MX Store. It was $200 including express post. I ordered it Thursday morning and it arrived Friday afternoon in time for the weekend. So once again, big shout out to MX Store for always being so switched on with their postage and their deliveries. They're so quick, they're always all over it. So they're my go-to place for everything. We're probably not going to get to the front wheel bearings today because A, look how dirty the bike is. I really need to clean it up. So we might just get the rear suspension working again, and then I may do 2 videos, possibly, depending on how good and how quick I am, because I might need to take the suspension into work so I can press the new bearings in with the vise. I don't have a vise here. So it might be a 2-part video, put it back together in the second part, clean it up, ride it, make sure it's good. So here we go. So I'll just see if I can demonstrate the suspension being crap, essentially. So I'll just pull it back off the stand for the moment. So right now it's at full ride height. You've got a little bit of suspension there, but we sit on the bike. Hey, it doesn't really want to go down, but then that's all the suspension you've got, is just that little bit of travel at the bottom. And when I get off the bike, it doesn't come back up unless I physically lift it like that. So at first I thought maybe it was a seized shock shaft, because I'm not a bike mechanic by any means. I am a car mechanic, but as far as bike experience goes, this is it. We're doing it all together. But a little bit of Dr. Google research suggested that it was in fact suspension bearings, not a rear shock, because we also had a really loud squeak. Bodie and I pulled all this apart the other night, and lubricated all of the components up that we could find. So we had the rear shock out of it and all that, and we managed to get rid of the squeak, but the suspension hasn't got any better. So new parts it is. Now, just remembering that I don't actually know what I'm doing, but down here's the bottom shock bearing. From what I've read, these are the most common failure point because they are sitting the lowest and they're most exposed to everything. So there's a couple of caps in here that, oh look at that, will just pop out, so that's awfully nice of it. Cool, and there's like some grotty, muddy WD-40, not wr450 in there, so I guess I'm going to try and pop those seals out, which this is what the new kit looks like. So those new outer spaces, the new seals, and then the actual bearing itself. So we'll go back to time lapse because this is probably going to take me a hell of a lot longer than what it should because I don't know what I'm doing. So we're relying on a fair bit of car mechanicking right now. So we're going to do some sockets and a hammer, and hopefully that will pop the old stuff out, and then I'll make a judgment call as to whether I think I can get the new one back in without fucking it, or if I need to take it to work and use a vise. So on to time lapse. So we got the new bearing in there. Was not too bad at the end of the day. I've had to use the old caps, I guess you could call it. I'm not even in frame, sorry about that. So these are the new caps that come with the bearing, but they are a bit deeper and they're sitting out even further, and I don't know if I'll be able to get them back in when it comes time to slide these in, because these were hard enough the other night when I was giving it a crack. So I've used the old caps, spaces, I don't know what the actual terminology is for them, but new bearing, it's all greased up, new inner race and new seals, all that fun stuff. So hopefully it'll go back in, but we'll have a crack at the linkage now. I think that's what it's called, but where did I put that? So that's ready to go back in. That old bearing was absolutely fucked. It might be hard to tell on the black glove, but the needle rollers were they're just covered in rust and mud. So that bearing was definitely failed. Is there a chance that that was the entirety of the problem? Probably. I could throw it all back together now, but the kit that I bought has everything that I need and was 160 bucks. Whereas just the rear shock bearing was about 45, so I'm going to replace at least the linkage as well, so I can try and justify the price. But so pretty much rinse and repeat here. We're going to try and punch this bad boy out and have a look what's on the inside and just find the matching pieces and go from there. back to time lapse. Alrighty, we got it after a lot of smacking and whacking. So much rust fell out of this. Same story as the lower shock bush, or bearing, sorry. Every needle roll in there is just covered in rust and mud and just gunk. So, one out. I'm going to probably remove the other one as well, and then clean this up, do some sanding if I can be bothered, and then try and throw it back together. Alrighty, they're all out now. I've got some cleaning to do in here. This is just full of gunk and mixture of WD-40 and rust and dirt and mud. But look at all the rust that's come out of it. It's like a war zone of freaking needle rollers everywhere. And even the base socket I was using, it's just like absolutely packed with rust and WD-40. Look at all the rust powder. So I think we might be onto something here. So clean it up now and see if we can't put it back together with a little bit less force than what it come apart, because this took some big hits to get it to come apart. So I'll see if I can clean this right up, maybe sand off. If I'll find some sandpaper, run it through the inside, lube the crap out of it, see if I can get the bearings to start. If not, then I'll have to take it into work and use a vise so I can be a bit more gentle with it. So I don't want to ruin these new bearings and have to buy another kit. So alright, so I managed to get one of these in so far, kind of confidently. I forgot how it came apart for a second there, but it is starting to get towards the end of the day, so I've had to bring in some extra lights. So you can kind of see new, that's the takeaway. So that seal's not quite seated correctly, so I'll just tap down on there a little bit to get that seal in. So I'm just going to go ahead and smash together this other side. Apt word of the use smash, because it's a lot of heavy hitting with some impact sockets and a hammer. But yeah, so we'll get this other one done. Probably won't be putting it back together tonight. My wife's just started putting my baby down, or our baby even, for the night. So she's probably not going to appreciate rattle guns and stuff in another 20 minutes. So we'll get this last bearing in, get it all cleaned up and ready to roll, and then we'll continue on in a couple of days time and throw it all back together. I'll probably stitch it all together into one video, lots of time lapse, because otherwise this would be a 2.5 hour video. So with lots of time lapse and magic of editing and whatnot, we should be able to slap all this together in around a 10-minute video. So we'll keep on trucking. Alrighty, that's gonna have to do for tonight. It is well and truly time to stop and get ready for dinner and whatnot. So did a bit of a speed run there on that other linkage piece. I wasn't going to do it, and then I put the main piece that I was working on that whole time back in, bolted it up and felt how freely it moved, and then the other piece still in the bike wasn't moving at all. So it was a pretty good indication that that needed to be done. That is that fork piece just there that happened to clean up really, really well. So it was a slightly different style for the bearing, so it took me a minute to figure that out. But all in all, it went fairly well. So I've got an absolute shit show of needle roller bearings and all sorts of shit down here, all rusty crap. So I'll spend a little bit of time cleaning up and then dinner and then off to bed. So we will pick this up in a couple days. Alrighty, it's been a couple days. Time to get back into the 2007 wr450. Finished putting together the suspension, putting everything back in, and then we can go for a test ride and make sure it's all good. So we'll cut straight back in the time lapse and get this thing back together. Alrighty, we are back together, finally. So we've got all of our trims on, everything's all bolted up. I haven't taken it off the stand just yet, so we get to experience that all together for the first time. It's an absolute mess of dead bearings and rust and mud and gunk that I've got to clean up, stain all the concrete and everything. But just a few little tips for anyone out there that's trying to remove the rear shock out of your wr450. I assume it's very similar for a lot of different year models. The shock bolt itself, it's hard to see with this wiring in the way, but the nut for it's just in here. But this bolt just above it is for the rear frame. You've got another one here, and then another one down here. So the shock itself won't come out unless you either remove a bunch of stuff, i.e. airbox and trims and all that sort of crap, or if you undo those bolts, you can just pull back on the frame and it just separates the rear half of the bike ever so slightly, and then there's enough room to get that shock out. So it makes it a lot easier to work with. But we'll put you back up on the stand, and we'll take this off the stand, and we'll see if we've got ourselves operating rear suspension. Alright, fingers crossed. Here we go. Moment of truth. It should go down and it should come back up. Oh, look at that. We have suspension. It's soft, but we've got it. Beautiful. That's awesome. That's ridiculous how much more supple that is. It was about $170 for that kit, and it did have everything that I needed. That is so BearingWorks, which once again, like just about everything you'll see on this channel, bought from the legends over at MX Store. So from what seemed like a big issue for a second there, because again, no idea what I was looking at. I was thinking maybe a seized rear shock, a few bearings, a couple of hours worth of work, and now we're fully operational again. So that's bloody awesome. A few take-home notes. Ideally, best case scenario, you're not using sockets and hammers to smash bearings out. The better way to do it would be with a vise. You still use your sockets and you wind in and out of a vise. Best case scenario would be using a bearing press, but as you've probably realised, we're fresh out of both of those options. So big old hammer and big old sockets it is. So not the friendliest on the equipment. Would I have done that to the 2023? Maybe not, but this old girl, old Gurtrude, she loves it. Thanks for watching.